That is when you heard the president say the people with weapons weren't there to hurt him and that he wanted the Secret Service to remove the magnetometers.
That's correct.
When the president said that he would be going to the Capitol during his speech on the ellipse, the Secret Service scrambled to find a way for him to go.
Mr. Meadows had a conversation with me where he wanted me to work with Secret Service on a movement from the White House to the Bullard Hotel so he could attend the meeting or meetings with Mr. Giuliani and his associates.
One thing the January 6 hearings showed us was just how integral the Secret Service was to what happened the day of the Capitol attack. Which is why it was such a huge shock when we learned that all of the text messages from dozens of agents on January 5th and 6th were deleted. That prompted the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General to open an investigation into the agency. It's important to note the Inspector General himself was the same DHS Inspector General during the Trump administration. In fact, the guy who heads up the Secret Service right now is the same guy who oversaw it during the insurrection. And after the investigation into illegal text messages was launched, a spokesperson for the Secret Service released a statement saying, quote, "The insinuation the Secret Service maliciously deleted text messages following a request is false, instead blaming a technical error." But now top Democrats are calling for the Inspector General to step aside because he reportedly found out about those deleted text messages, quote, in December 2021, 2 months earlier than previously reported, and did not alert Congress at the time. Now, Jeh Johnson served as the head of the Department of Homeland Security under President Barack Obama. It's the body that oversees the Secret Service, and he joins me now. It's great to have you on. I want to start with the Secret Service because it's a agency with a lot of mythos attached to it. They have obviously an incredibly important and crucial job. I think there's lots of people who work there who are, patriots who take their job very seriously. Institutionally, the story the Secret Service is telling here doesn't really add up. And I'm wondering your perspective as a person who worked at DHS, how are you hearing all this?
Chris, first of all, thanks for having me on. My internet connection's a little unstable, so you might lose me and you'll end up talking to yourself. But I was the oversight of the Secret Service for 3 years, and I was a protectee of the Secret Service for 3 years. I was in their constant company. Little perspective here. The Secret Service is trained to take a bullet for the protectee. On occasion, even, the Secret Service is trained to save a protectee from himself, as we saw on January 6th. I have to say, I would be very surprised to learn that there was something nefarious around January 6th, related to January 6th, through the loss of these text messages. For as long as I've known the Secret Service, going back to my days as a federal prosecutor 33 years ago, they are good at some things, but they are not good at the back office stuff. And one of the things that frustrated me most in the job as DHS secretary, their oversight with a number of unforced errors coming out of that agency,
yes,
while on the other hand, their central mission is executed flawlessly, like a UN General Assembly, for example, the largest domestic security operation in 2015, led by the Secret Service. So in the context of the events around January 6th, where you have a presidential transition, an outgoing president who frankly is unhinged, an incoming president, the Secret Service is in the middle of that transition. They're managing the security of January 20, and the nation is on high alert. Frankly, I'm not surprised that they did not get the data migration completely perfect. We will learn more about this, but I've had to admonish the Secret Service. I've had to ask for a director's resignation. It is far from perfect in its execution of a number of things, without a doubt.
That's a very interesting perspective and illuminating because of the experience that you had. There were some there were some scandals there at the Secret Service during the period of time that you were overseeing it. I want to ask too about something that you said. You were a former federal prosecutor, as you just referenced, and you said that more or less that the public evidence thus presented could, in the hands of it, I think you said aggressive prosecutor, be an indictable, yes, prosecutable case. Elaborate on that.
Based upon everything we know from public sources, including most notably the January 6th hearings, I believe that an aggressive prosecutor would be willing to take on the case against Donald Trump for participation in a seditious conspiracy, for violation of the insurrection statute. In my opinion, January 6th was a very definition of an insurrection, and the statute punishes those who incite the insurrection and those who give aid and comfort thereto. Donald Trump lit the match that started the conflagration. There were moments during January 6th where he poured gasoline on the fire, and he was the commander-in-chief of all the firemen and failed to call them in. I believe that we're well within the range of potential criminal liability if an aggressive prosecutor is willing to take that on.
You served in the Obama administration. You were if I'm not mistaken, the general counsel of the Department of Defense. You've long and distinguished legal career. I tend to think of the individuals like yourself who made up the Obama cabinet and worked close to the former president as, pretty strong institutionalists. I mean, really believe in American institutions, believe that they are that they can be made to be responsive and produce increases in our welfare. And I guess I wonder what do you think about the case of this will be bad for the country? It'll tear the country apart. It's institutionally reckless to prosecute an ex-president from your perspective as someone who's served as long as you have.
Chris, I respect and admire what Gerald Ford did in 1974, 75, sparing the country the prosecution of Richard Nixon. I think we live in different times right now. An argument could be made that if there is an indictable case against the former president, yet we fail to prosecute him, we may be doing more harm to our democracy than if we forbear. It's a different time now. And in my judgment, the actions that occurred during the Trump presidency around January 6th and before were actually far more serious than Watergate.
Yeah. Jeh Johnson, thank you so much for hanging with us through those technical difficulties. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Always great to see you. Thank you very much.